Hey dudes, it's Lerald. This is an extremely old strategy that I'm bringing back once again. It is cheap, fast, and very profitable. And compared to our last several setups, this is pretty easy to do as well. So what are we actually doing here? It's Maven Mirror Madness Mondays, I suppose. So let's get into it, but first be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, join the Discord, there's a link in the description, say hello to me and Sunset. Alright, let's start with the sales pitch here, right? In terms of how much I'm actually making from this strategy, I'm selling it in the whatever thumbnail and video title is something like a 25 divine per hour strategy, but actually that's a pretty big undersell. This is more like a 30 to 40 divine per hour strategy if you do it well. I always prefer to underpromise and overdeliver. Also, RNG is RNG. You may get unlucky, the market may fluctuate, so, you know, blah, 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 yeah. In terms of what we're farming, we're doing Deli Mirrors and Maven Witnessed, Elder or Guardian or Shaper Guardian or Elder Slayer maps. I chose Elder Slayer maps for the set of 40 maps that I did, but you could do any of them. They're all relatively comparable. So what we're getting out of that is Deli Orbs, which are very valuable, very expensive right now. We're also getting Maven Chisels, same thing, super expensive and valuable. And then we're getting Maven Invitation rewards like Maven's Writs, which are worth over a divine each, Orbs of Conflict, which are worth like 2 1/3, 2.5 divines each, and then random Awakened Support Gems, which are just kind of a free bonanza jackpot, but they pop up quite a bit more often than you'd think. Now, because I was doing Elder Slayer maps, I was also getting Elder Slayer Exalted Orbs and Elder Slayer Crest, Cirrus Crest, so that was valuable as well. In terms of the cost of the strategy, it's basically just the maps and the time spent. Now, the cost of the maps, if you buy them in bulk, I have self-farmed a ton of these maps already just by playing the game a whole bunch, but if I were doing this just from fresh, I think the cost of a set of Cirrus Guardian maps is 1 divine for, you know, one of each of the 4 maps, if you buy them in bulk very quickly. So that seems a little bit much, but the tokens that you get from the Cirrus Guardians are, if you sell those sets in bulk, also 1 divine each. So they essentially pay for themselves, except you also generally get a Cirrus Guardian token from each of the invitations, maybe like 1 every couple of invitations. So you actually over profit, like over sustain. You also get a lot of Elder Slayer maps, Elder Guardian maps, Shaper Guardian maps, so you're kind of able to sustain on maps as well, especially if you bounce back and forth between multiple different Guardian sets, then you're really able to just completely self-sustain this whole strategy and actually set your cost down to 0 once you've kind of done the initial setup of getting into this strategy in the first place. We run Quant in the map device. We run insanely cheap Scarabs with lots of flexibility on Scarabs, so there's just so much room to adjust this strategy. If for some reason anything gets super expensive or too hard to do, you could really flex in a lot of different ways to make it cheap or easy, or both. So I did throw everything into a dump tab. This is the Wealthy Exile breakdown of that dump tab, 55 divines out of 40 maps. Pretty good, but then there is the, you know, if we want to count the cost of 10 divines for running those 10 sets of Elder Guardian maps, this is 45 divines. And this took me a little under 2 hours, and that included some inventory management and watching the X-Files still, and like swapping characters about half or 2/3 of the way through. So a little bit of wasted time there. Still, 2 hours I think is pretty reasonable. I mean, I think if you're really like quite quick and not wasting any time, I think this would probably be more like an hour and a half to do all of this. So that would put you under 25 divines per hour, technically, except Wealthy Exile is a liar sometimes. So a lot of these values here are wrong. This is not a dig on Wealthy Exile at all. It's a great tool, it's just working with incorrect information because it's pulling from PoE Ninja, and this isn't a dig on PoE Ninja at all either. It's just pulling incorrect information from the trade site because the trade site, it's the only thing that these like online tools have in terms of an API to pull information from. So if you sell Orbs of Conflict in the in-game trade mechanic here, like, let's just do it, right? Conflict for a divine. It is selling for 2.2 divines right now. If you sell them, like if you sell them at the current asking price, but if you go to the like current asking price of buying them, if you basically just undercut that slightly, then we're looking at 2.3 divines, 2.35 divines even each. So this is undercutting what I could sell them for, even if I just sold them at exactly 2.3 divines, kind of undercut a little bit. You know, we're still losing a divine. And this kind of runs through all of this because there is so much undercutting with stuff that's put on the trade site, you know, illegitimate postings basically, or postings that people put up months ago. And and just never bothered to update. And so I did a little spreadsheet, flashbang warning, a little bit too late, but I did a little spreadsheet just compiling like the biggest, most high budget value items in this whole thing. And I also included the crests because crests are greatly undervalued in Wealthy Exile and on this trade tool. Like if you sell them in bulk, you'll be able to sell them for quite a bit more. You know, it is a bit more effort to actually do though, flashbang again. So the crests wound up being about like 5 to 6 divines of an undercut, and then the sum total of all of these things that I added up was actually about 18 divines of an undercut in terms of like what I'd actually farmed. So if we were to bump, 55 up to 18, or 55 plus 18, 73 divines, even if we cut out the 10 divines spent on the maps, even though they were self-farmed, so they didn't really cost me anything except time, we're looking at over 63 divines, or over 60 divines anyways, in the span of 2 hours. So that is over 30 divines an hour, easily. And the thing is, that's also not including any of the tier 16.5 maps that I got. It also isn't accounting for some of the tier 17 maps, which are greatly undervalued. These sanctuary maps are greatly undervalued. But all of this stuff is undervalued according to tools like Wealthy Exile that are pulling from the trade site. Maven chisels of like proliferation and avarice are worth over half a divine each, and according to the trade site, they're like 78 chaos or 40 chaos. Just factually inaccurate. So lots and lots and lots of stuff here to sell very quickly. That's like very, very valuable. These proliferation chisels, all of these Maven chisels are profitable, very valuable. A lot of cheapo simulacrums too, not really worth a ton, but like just free money, can't complain about that. I also got 4 raw divines, which felt pretty decent, and then 3 Elder Slayer Exalted Orbs, which kind of made me feel like doing Elder Slayers was very justifiable. I also got a tier 14.5 and 2 tier 15.5s, which I didn't realize those existed, but kind of a bit of a novelty, I suppose. So that's like the profit breakdown, right? Like there's a lot of currency to be made for sure. A lot of stuff. I mean, there's some stuff that you could just sell like at a bit of a loss just to get it off of your hands quickly, like the different crests. But you could sell them in bulk and definitely make more if you do it that way. It really is just kind of a matter of whether you're willing to inconvenience yourself, to get that bit of extra currency or not. Either way, I didn't really get any like huge jackpot drops. Like prior to doing this strategy, I was playing around with some versions of this, and I actually got a reflecting prism or whatever it's called, the reflection thing that's worth like 60 divines. I obviously didn't include that in this, but that was cool. But I didn't really get any high value scarabs. I didn't like get any mirrors or Hinakora's locks or anything out of this. So pretty basic stuff in terms of the rewards. I think all of this is extremely repeatable over time. All right, so that's the profits. Now let's move on to the tree that I'm using. And we're not exactly doing a map mod juicing setup like we were before. Like we have 4 map mods at least on every map, but I'm not like doing corrupted 8 mod map farming. So I'm not taking every single one of the map mod effect points. I did play around with that as opposed to just getting the 6 points in the middle here for the 3 quant and 15 rarity. I played around with essentially the same setup, but like with the wings out here on the top hat, and I didn't really notice any difference at all, but it does make the maps a little harder, which, we kind of want this to be quick and easy, so I don't think that's totally necessary. The main thing that we're doing, though, is we're just taking a lot of Delirium-related reward stuff. So we're taking, like, Imagined Pursuit, so we get extra Delirium rewards, and Screaming Whispers for more Splinters. Paranoid Fixation is normally not a great modifier, or not normally a great, like, notable, like 1% chance for Delirious Unique Monsters to drop a Deli Orb. Not that great, but when you're killing, 4 bosses, or potentially more, 5 bosses, and then you're also potentially killing like deli bosses in the map as well, 1 or 2 of those, like, a 6% chance, 7% chance for an extra deli orb is not bad. Now, this isn't something that I've been doing in this setup, but I also think you could maybe even combine Anarchy into this setup and try and turn this into like a real deli orb printing machine. I think that could certainly work. Deli orbs are definitely one of our biggest moneymakers in this strategy. They're also one of the things where like the profit margin in the Wealthy Exile versus my little after the fact spreadsheet was like the biggest gap, because they were all being evaluated at like 10 to 15 chaos each, and most of them are more like, yeah, especially if you re-roll them into good Deadly Orbs, they're like 35, 40 chaos a piece through the in-game trade tool. So we are doing Maven stuff, so we're taking destructive play. There is normally an incentive when you're taking destructive play to like kind of full clear the map, so you'll get 3 additional bosses. I'm not worrying about that, right? I'm just kind of speeding through the maps, and you know, if I get 1 extra boss, that's okay. If I get 2 or 3, that's better. And then we're kind of taking all of the things that apply to final map bosses as well: Chittering Champions, Conquered Conquerors, Remnants of the Past, Vivid Memories, you know, all of those things that would apply to them, as well as significant troves, just trying to get as much as we can off of the map boss, shaping the world. You know, anything that'll apply to those map bosses, might as well get the benefit of it. But we're not like wasting a bunch of time trying to full clear out the map in order to take advantage of it, and that is why I'm not taking thorough exploration. I did play around with that some before doing this, taking thorough exploration, thoroughly exploring every map and getting wisps onto the bosses, and I never got a single jackpot drop out of doing that at all. I did a bunch of maps that way, and I got no jackpot drops, and then as I was finally going like, all right, this is over, I'm done with this is really stupid and boring, that was when I got whatever it's called, the like reflecting prism or whatever for like 60 divines off of a random, not boss related, not juiced mob. You know, it's just how it goes sometimes. So one thing we're not doing is we're not taking points to make Delirium spawn, because that takes like 7 points. That's quite a bit of point investment. I guess 8 if you're having to travel over here as well. And I just don't really want that. I'm also not taking pathological. I'm not doing anything to put Delirium layers onto the maps, because I want to be able to self-sustain maps that I'm then able to Delirium mirror farm to get more Delirium orbs. So I specifically don't want Deli mirror or Deli orb layers to be on any of the maps by default. All right, so that's the passive tree. Pretty simple. There's a lot of room for flexibility. You know, like this whole middle section you could definitely take out and put into whatever else you want it to be in. If you wanted to modify this strategy to be more of a map farming strategy, you could drop those points and put them in here, you know, do whatever you want. But that is the approach I'm going with here, because we're just trying to kind of quickly boss rush, just get as much as we can out of the bosses that we kill with the Maven paying attention, and trying to not make it be too hard for ourselves. That's why we're not taking Descent into Madness. I'm actually trying to not make this be that difficult. All right, now let's talk about Scarabs. So you only have 1 mandatory Scarab, and that would be the Delirium Scarab, because we're not taking the points in the tree to guarantee that mirrors spawn. But, you know, if you do that, if you want to drop those points elsewhere and put those into that, then you don't even need this Scarab. But it's super cheap, and Delirium on the map device is not cheap at all. So I think this is very, very, like, good value as a single Scarab. Then you kind of have a bunch of freedom. I'll show you what I've been playing around with. I've really played around with 2 potential setups. So I have been using Delirium Scarab of Mania in everything, and I've also been using the regular Titanic Scarab and everything, because you get about 30 to 50% pack size in most maps. And so 30 to 50% more quant and rarity out of the bosses is like pretty good. It does mean 30 to 50% toughness and damage. So, you know, kind of balance that accordingly. And then I've also played around with either doing 1 or 2 treasure scarabs for an additional reward modifier on the bosses and 30% increased toughness, which sounds bad. The way that toughness works is it's like a multiplicative scalar on damage reduction for monsters. If they have 100% toughness, they take half damage. So playing Mamba, which I did for like less than half, unfortunately, I'm still pretty easily able to like hit the dot cap on those bosses, and they fall down pretty quickly. When I was playing around with Toxic Rain Pathfinder, this was a little bit iffy. So something I played around with was swapping in a Delirium Scarab of Neurosis just to force the bosses, the Deli bosses, to spawn, and then using just 2 Titanic Scarabs of Treasures for that, 60% toughness on those Deli bosses, but then also giving them an additional reward. I never got anything of value out of them to drop. You know, I tried, ultimately. I think I probably got some extra Deli orbs out of those Deli bosses, at least, thanks to Paranoid Fixation, because I did have quite a few maps where I would have like 4 Deli orbs drop. So, you know, usually get 1 to 2 Deli orbs per map, and yeah, some of those maps where I got like 3, 4, 5 of them even, I'm pretty confident they were coming from the unique bosses and paranoid fixation. So really any combination of these 4 Scarabs kind of worked. I was always playing with Mania, but you don't have to. It does make the map harder, 50% faster delirium scaling. That can get pretty rough if you're on like a kind of a long map like a Strand or something like that. Or if you're doing Shaper Guardians, same kind of deal, same sort of layout. The rest of these, they're all like decent options, very interchangeable, and all of these are super, super cheap as well. Like all of these are, I think, less than 1 chaos each. Now, just to give some other recommendations, you can play around with like Cartography, Scarab of Escalation, and Corruption. It's something I chose not to play around with just because I didn't want to like 8-mod map any of the like Shaper, Elder Guardian, or Conqueror maps that dropped, and then like not be able to run them or whatever. Like I actually want them to be relatively easy to do. Influencing Scarab of Conversion is something you can also use. I think it's a 25% chance to convert any dropped maps into like Shaper, Elder Guardian, Conqueror, Synth maps. The only issue I have with this is just it'll be like fighting with tier 16.5s and tier 17s, and I did want to get as many tier 16.5s as I could out of doing this strategy, which like I got a handful. I think I got what 8 tier 16.5s, not all of which are great, but like I think about half of them are dunes, so like that's okay. Not a huge deal. This is definitely a good Scarab if you want to like self-sustain. You could maybe combine escalation and conversion, and that's like pretty good. And it doesn't add any difficulty to the map, unlike all these Titanic Scarabs that do. And then the other strategy I just sort of came up with, like a shower thought type of deal, was just shoving in a bunch of Anarchy Scarabs, like as many as you can, in conjunction with Paranoid Fixation, and maybe taking like Ruckus, and then if you want it to be hard, taking Exiled Will, otherwise like not bothering with that. You can just shove a bunch of unique monsters into your maps that are delirious, and now you have like 20 more chances at an extra delirium orb per map. So that could be like an insane jackpot strategy. You could just print out like a dozen delirium orbs a map. I don't know. Yeah, certainly something to play around with. I think I might actually play around with it once I finish making this video. We'll see. All right, now I'm just going to talk a little bit about the actual state of running the maps. So in terms of rolling the maps, I just chisel out and go. I'm not trying to go for 6 mods or corrupted 8 mod maps or anything like that. These maps are all supposed to be quick and relatively easy. Speed is really the key here. I'm not full clearing the maps. I'm just killing my way to the boss, killing the bosses, looting, remembering to turn off the delirium mirror effect and loot all the rewards that come from that. That is important. Sometimes it can take a while for all the delirium rewards to like spit out onto the ground, so you do want to wait a second there, and then it's on to the next. I did play around with trying to get 7 delirium rewards for every time for a while. I don't think it was worth it at all to kill the extra mobs. I think you just, if you find the boss quickly, you just go, that's a fast map. That's pretty much it. If you are reasonably fast, I think you could do the maps at the speed that I did, which is like 8 to 10 minutes per set of 4, including the invitation and including inventory management. I don't go drop stuff out of my inventory until I've done a full set of 4 maps and then the invitation. Then I'll clear out my inventory and do another set. If you're blazing fast, probably more like 6 to 8 minutes per set, I think is doable. And then you're probably looking at more like 40 to 50 divines per hour as a return. Speed is really the determining factor on how profitable this is going to be for you. RNG doesn't hurt either, like having more rarities, I guess okay. You know, not a huge deal. More map mods if your build is stronger is technically going to be more rewarding. But again, like it's all jackpot stuff. Like really the key here is just to be fast. Single target damage is also very important. I did half of this, or I think, like I said, I think I did about 2/3 of this as Toxic Rain. I switched over to Mamba for I think the last 3 sets, so something like that. I would do it all as Mamba if I could do it over again. I greatly overestimated how important move speed is compared to single target damage. It's good to move quickly. Make no mistake, but damage is the most important aspect of making these maps be fast. So you just want to waddle over to the boss, delete it instantly, loot it, and then get onto the next map. As for the invitations, I just roll up to 5 or 6 mods. I just use Chaos, I don't Exalt. I did try doing Alk Scour, and that was way slower. Just Chaos your way until you have at least 5 mods, then do the invitation. They should be extremely easy compared to Deli Mirror Maven bosses. They should be really, really, really easy. And the final question I want to answer here is Elder Slayers versus Elder Guardians versus Shaper Guardians versus Synth maps. So Synth maps can't have any stuff affecting it, no Scarabs affecting it. So I think they're basically out. You can do them. They will give Synth items, so they can be useful, but they're a real jackpot strategy compared to the other three. I think they're a lot worse. Elder Slayers are the most expensive of the three for a reason. The others are cheaper. They may be more efficient, but there is less chance of jackpots because if you get like a Shaper Exalted Orb, that's not even worth a third of a Hunter Exalted Orb. Shaper Guardians are also slower due to the map layouts and due to the Chimera fight. That fight's just really slow. Conqueror bosses are the fastest, Elder Slayers, whatever. Elder bosses are mostly okay, but they all have the transition from phase to phase to phase that, you know, it just makes them slow down. So that's not great. And then also the actual spawning of the bosses in, like the Elder coming out and slowly killing a guy and then going away, just makes them slower. So I prefer the Conqueror bosses. They're the fastest. I like the fact that you get to do the random Atlas boss as well. You get a chance at some random Atlas invitations, 10 boss invitations. Those are mostly not great, but they can give Orbs of Conflict. I got one from an Atlas invitation, which is, I mean, that's a 2 1/3, 2.5 divines for free, so not bad. So that's Maven mirror mapping. It's a really fun, fast-paced strategy. It farms a lot of really valuable currency that people need to juice their high-end maps. It's all very easy to liquidate, and if you bounce back and forth between the types of bosses that you're running, you're going to very easily self-sustain and really never need to spend any currency at all. And I think that's pretty much it. Be sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and join the Skipping Sleep Studio Discord so you can say hello to me and Sunset if you haven't already. And finally, thank you to all of our channel members. If you want to support us so we can keep making more PoE content, become a channel member as well. Thanks for watching. Bye.